in another scene, I have an emotional scene where I need to be crying. And I remember right before shooting it, he was saying to, and you this, and you this, and you this. And he looked at me and he said, and everything that you love leaves you. Rolling. And it was like, so he said it because he's an actor. He knew exactly what I needed to hear. Not, could you cry more? Which is the last way in the world to get what you need.
Hi, I'm Rob Word. Welcome to A Word on Westerns, and today we have a special treat because Horizon, Kevin's epic. Well, we have somebody who's joining us today who's had a great career. Well, her character in Horizon makes it through part 1, part 2, and part 4. So she lives, and she lives with us today. Elizabeth Dennehy. Elizabeth, thank you for joining
us. Spoiler alert, I live. Hi, how are you, Rob?
I'm great, thank you. I want to know all about that movie from your perspective. I think Kevin is a brilliant director. How does he work with actors?
He is a dream to work with an actor as a director. First of all, they understand exactly what you need to hear. And just a little bit of going backwards, when I got the part, it was kind of surreal because I had been like a high school theater teacher for 6 years. And I thought, okay, this is my life. And then I decided I was going to quit my job. And my husband said, well, you better come up with something else to do because you're going to drive me crazy. So I laid down a self-tape like I've done 1,000 times. I don't even read the information anymore. It's like, where are the sides? What's the character? What are the given circumstances? I didn't know what the project was. Was it TV or film? And it was an Irish woman, Civil War. And of course, my husband's from Ireland. So he helped me with the self-tape. We banged it out. We sent it off just like we've done a million times. Went off to Ireland to visit family for 6 weeks. And while I was in Ireland, my agent messaged me and said, they're checking your availability. I hadn't heard those words in long. I mean, this is reality. This is what reality is like for actors nowadays. I thought, oh, well, if it comes through, it'll be a miracle. And miracle of miracles, on the what would have been my first day back at school, August 14, my agent called and said, you're playing Mrs. Reardon. And the whole family were jumping up and down for joy.
I bet they were.
And then I found out, it's Kevin Costner, wrote, directed, and starring in it, and it's for me.
You didn't know what it was for?
I just didn't take in all the information. I auditioned for so many things. I feel like if you know, it's intimidating and it sort of colors you can end up playing your given circumstances, which is please give me this job, instead of the character's given circumstances, which is Mrs. Reardon has a job to do. She's got a husband. These people are breaking into her house and stealing her furniture. And she's beating them over the head with an umbrella to get...
In your audition, did you do that with an Irish accent?
Yes. Yeah.
And give me a little of that.
So what they said in the breakdown, this is what I remember reading, is they needed U.S.-based actors who could believably play Irish. And I'm like, so it's a narrow lane, but it's my lane.
But you were over in Ireland, listening to everything.
Exactly.
Too. How
exactly.
Perfect.
When they asked it, I'll do it right now. When they asked if I need a dialect coach, I was just like, I've just been in Ireland for 6 weeks. I'm married to a guy for 30 years. Seriously, I think I've got it. And sometimes a dialect coach can get inside your head and suddenly you're starting to think about your vowel sounds instead of what you're actually trying to say. And I feel like people lay it on a little bit too thick usually. Start sounding like the Lucky Charms elf. So the Lucky Charms leprechaun. So it's just a very light touch.
I believe it.
Okay,
it's
great.
So good.
And so, so I got the job and it was just, I hadn't heard those words. It had been a long, long drought with the pandemic and everything. Just had been sort of, I guess my life is going to be a high school theater teacher. And, that was fine too. And I was teaching Shakespeare. So then what happened first was everybody was already in Moab. Two extraordinary things. I got hired from a self-tape. I met the other actors when we got to Moab. They had met with Kevin on Zoom. They had some follow-up things. So when does that ever happen? From a self-tape, boom. So my first response was, who asked for too much money? because I'm so cynical and so jaded that they had offers out probably, but it was 170 speaking parts. So I have a joke that I'm number 53 on the call sheet, but I'm married to number 15 on the call sheet, which is Michael Rooker.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And he has that great beard, too.
He was able to grow the great beard, and we flew together to Moab for a fitting because they were already in Moab. So we had to fly to Moab for a weekend in September to put on the costume and figure out the hair. So we flew on the plane. He drove me to the hotel. We spoke in the dialect all the time, constantly when we were together, which was great because once I told him that I was from Long Island and that I could normally fall into that whole thing, he was like, you cannot speak in your normal voice when we're working together. So we did the fitting, came back to LA, and then we went back at the end of September. And here's a little juicy tidbit about what it's like being an actor. So basically my scene, without giving anything away, I happen upon two soldiers who were under instructions from my husband, Michael Rooker, to take our daughter's things out of the house so that we can provide for Sienna Miller and the character playing her daughter. And I see these guys stealing my daughter's things, and I start beating them over the head with a parasol. Michael, Tommy Reardon, says, stop. And when you see who this is for, you'll understand. And he leads me to see Sienna and her beautiful daughter, played by Georgia McPhail, a 12-year-old. And I say, why didn't you tell me? You should have told me. So that's basically your introduction to Mrs. Reardon. But we shot the seeing them at the river first. And 5 days later, we shot the part A, the beginning of the scene. That's really hard to do. Really hard to do. And so you have to recalibrate, and you have to say, okay, remember what's happened before this. Now I'm being led to the river and I'm seeing these beautiful women. And then 5 days later, we do part A. And it's what's really hard is you go, oh, if this had been in order, would I change anything? Would it have improved? So picture this, my first scene, first work in a long time. Maybe, I think the last thing I'd done on film was 2015. So it was a good 7 years since I'd done anything on film. And I'm wearing a chemise, a corset, a petticoat, a hoop skirt, a wool dress, a lace collar, a cameo, a sculpture of a wig with a bonnet on it, and a little purse, and a parasol, and a shawl that keeps falling off. And everybody's fussing with the hair. And it's this massive scene on the river where there's men boiling water just so the laundry has steam coming out of it, and people planting trees. And I'm going to meet Kevin Costner for the first time. So a lot of tumult going on, a lot going on, like suddenly thrust into this world. And I have to keep in mind everything that's come before and, meeting these actors. And Kevin meets me on the set. And another thing that was in my head was that he had done Silverado with my father. And I'm like, can't bring that up now. It's so beside the point. Let's get the work done. He brought it up first.
Did it throw you?
No, but it's so gracious because it was a great icebreaker, and it meant that I didn't have to, and I didn't have to figure out when to do it. He's super busy. There's a lot going on. There's an army of people, extras, the river, the horses, the uniforms, the guns. Oh my God, the guns, because it's a Civil War settlement, an encampment. And a lot going on, and he sat down with me while all this is going on, and we had a lovely, lovely chat.
How
and he
wonderful.
said, I was so sorry to hear about your father's passing. And he said it was really awful because it was during COVID. Then he started to share about his parents passing. And it was exactly, and I think it was on purpose. It was exactly what my character needed to hear. Mrs. Reardon needed to hear, and it got me in the right place. I was relaxed. I wasn't nervous, and I was touched emotionally.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. He's such a great visual director, but to hear how he's able to draw out the perfect performance.
And in another scene, I have an emotional scene where I need to be crying. And I remember right before shooting it, he was saying to Michael Rooker, and you this, and you this, and you this. And he looked at me and he said, and everything that you love leaves you rolling, and it was like, so he said it because he's an actor. He knew exactly what I needed to hear, not. Could you cry more? Which is the last way in the world to get what you need. So he said exactly the right thing. An incredibly generous man, really, really giving, looks after the actor. And of course, he can put himself in your head and he knows exactly what you need right in the moment. Especially with all of the chaos that was going on.
He's a fine director, maybe a genius in Westerns. I remember when Open Range came out, and I loved it in the theaters.
So
I saw it twice in the theaters, but when the DVD came out, it had segments that were taken out of the film because everybody said, well, it's too long anyway. It runs on and on and on. And I bought it just so I could see those other scenes because he had cut them. And just looking at those scenes that were beautifully done, but not in the movie, he knows right where to place the camera. I know right where Bobby Duvall is going, and look at this, and just the intercutting, brilliant.
Yeah.
And I love Westerns, obviously.
Yeah. You know what's funny is I'm from New York and I live in LA, and this is not the first Western I did. I did Lazarus Man.
Oh, you did the pilot, the first episode.
First episode of Lazarus Man in Santa Fe on the Western town where my father shot Silverado.
That's a forgotten series, and it's such a wonderful premise. He's got amnesia, kind of, because he's out there to save Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
They capture him and bury him alive, and he comes out and he doesn't remember anything.
It was ahead of its time.
Yes.
It absolutely was ahead of its time, and the pilot was just brilliant. Dick Beebe, who's no longer with us, sadly, but he was Abraham Lincoln's Secret Service, bodyguard, and then the assassination happened, and then I guess he was taken out and left for dead, and we had the best time. He was a dream to work with. What a lovely, lovely guy.
And how sad the way it was canceled. He had some sort of odd cancer, and so they canceled it, and then it went into remission. They could have kept doing the show. I think he did another series after that.
I was driving in the car on the 10, and the radio announced that he died. I literally had to pull over. I don't know if you've ever had that experience where it was such a shock, because he could not have been lovelier to me and lovely to work with. It was a great, great job. Johnny Jensen was the director on that. Fantastic.
And it was a two-parter.
We shot 19 days, and the reason I remember that is every day that ended, it was like, it's only 17 days, it's only 16 days. One of those jobs that you just didn't want to end. I loved my costumes. That was the first time people came to my house with clothes and wig, and they did the fitting in my apartment. And I said, so what would you like me to wear for the first scene? And they were like, what would you like to wear for the first scene? A leading lady treatment that I'd never had before. That was amazing. It was great.
Well, those are wonderful shows too, though. And how did you like Santa Fe?
How can you not love Santa Fe? I was really spoiled, though, because everybody was staying in, I don't even know, hotels. And my father, after Silverado, fell in love with Santa Fe so much that he built a house there. And it is the most beautiful house I've ever been in.
Do you still have the house?
No. We'll never forgive him for... They sold the house and moved to Connecticut, which is where he's originally from, because he wanted to bring his children up in New England. And we were very, very sad that he sold the Santa Fe house, because we've been living in LA since 1989. And it was nice to feel like I had family on the West Coast, and that we would be able to go there, fly for an hour, and be there for Thanksgiving. And the house was spectacular. It was such a beautiful place. So I got to live there. I said to the Lazarus Man people, so you just pay me what you would have paid for my hotel and my per diem, and I've got a house to stay in Santa Fe. So it was great. And my father and his wife weren't there. I had the place to myself. But I would have been glad if they had been there.
Sure.
So it was great.
Well, I love it there too.
Oh, it's beautiful. Just wonderful.
So let's get back to
Horizon.
Where all was that shot?
So my parts were all in Moab, but they have been going to I don't know if this means anything to you, St. George. And there are other locations because they needed snow shots. They needed high mountain shots looking down on places. So I am, like I said, I moved from New York to LA. I'm never been to Utah before, was completely ignorant. So I know that they were shooting in other places.
Do you want to go back?
I can't wait to go back.
Well, there's a Kanab Film Festival every August. You should be invited to
What
that.
is it?
It's called the Kanab Film Festival.
Oh.
I've been a couple of times, and Clint Walker, who was Cheyenne, used to have a place there too, and so he would always go. And it's just spectacular, and you can go to the different locations where they shot films.
There is you probably know this already. In Moab, we were staying at a Airbnb kind of Elements hotel, and then you drive a little bit further up the river, and there was something called, I think, the Red River Lodge, I think, and they show movies outside that were shot there. So all the John Wayne movies, and we a couple of Danny Houston was staying there, and we would go up there and watch the movies.
Yeah, well, I saw Danny Houston also. He did. It's so great that Westerns are sort of coming back. You know, Kevin, come on, pal.
Yeah, right?
But Danny's also in Viggo Mortensen's new
I can't believe that he's in both.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
He's such a lovely, lovely guy. The whole movie shoot, from the minute we set foot in Moab, and I wasn't there the whole time. They were there before me, and this movie 2, I flew in and shot one day. I did movie 1 and movie 2 in September of 22, and then I had to go back in June of 23 and do one day of movie 2, because it's all about the locations. And every single minute we were there, Sienna Miller, everybody, Michael Rooker, everybody, Will Patton, we're pinching ourselves. I'm pinching myself. Like, I just can't believe I get to do this, and I get paid for it. Like, we couldn't believe, golden hour in Moab, it makes me cry just thinking about it. This is paradise, heaven on earth. Nothing like it. And I applaud him, Kevin, for picking Moab, because so many Westerns, as you know, are shot out of the country, in Canada or down in Mexico. And I think it's wonderful that he took it upon himself to keep the money in America.
He wanted that tradition, that John Ford field, Fort Apache and Wagon Master, they were shot there. I think Rio Grande was shot in Moab also.
He worked with legislators to get the tax deal so that it was affordable to shoot there.
That's why everybody leaves, because of the tax incentives.
The other thing that I don't know if people realize about this movie, and I know it from the get-go, is the care that they took about original peoples and respecting the land. So if it was precious sacred land, they figured out a way around that. Every single location has been blessed by and approved of by the native peoples. And not only that, in every job of the film, casting, location scouting, costumes, makeup, the languages that were spoken was treated with enormous respect. And there were ceremonies before rolling camera.
Kevin had such an open heart for Dances with Wolves and the indigenous people there. He gave them more depth than ever before in movies. I mean, you look at a breakthrough film like A Broken Arrow that Delmer Daves directed with Jimmy Stewart and Jeff Chandler as Cochise. He got an Oscar nomination for that, but they were treated well. But Deborah Paget as the Indian princess, it just doesn't happen like that anymore. And I think Taylor Sheridan actually is responsible for bringing a lot of that to light and helping. But Kevin, with Dances with Wolves, he set the standard for the American Indian to come in.
Because Taylor did Wind River, right?
Yes, he did.
That was amazing.
Yes.
Amazing film. And Sicario, oh my gosh, so talented.
Well, he only wrote Sicario.
Oh, right. So
not that means that it's bad. It's a great film.
It was one of my father's favorite films. My father never stopped talking about Sicario. But I just thought that the care and the respect and the fact in Horizon, the native people speak in their language and there's English subtitles. So we're the ones that are differently abled who need help. understanding.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect. Yeah.
about time. So with the care and the respect and all the costumes and everything by the book, just did it properly from get-go. I remember I read all 4 scripts when I first got the offer, and it reads like a novel. I mean, so many speaking. I love sprawling stories, sprawling sagas.
Well, this is more sprawling than most because it started off as 1 film and then 2 films, and now it's 4.
I was at Cannes for the premiere. I was in London for all of May, and I wrote to the producers and I said, you don't have to fly me there, you don't have to put me up, but I've never been to the Cannes Film Festival and I would love to go. So William and I went.
Tell us about the experience after it was over with the 7 or 10 minutes of applause.
Yeah, I keep hearing different accounts of that. But here's the thing about Cannes. They do that for every film. Oh. They do that for every single film when it ends. And I actually think it's lovely because so much work and sweat, even if it's, even if people don't love the movie, it's appreciating the work that went into it and appreciating the drive and the vision and the fact that people go there. It's a wonderful display of camaraderie and encouragement, and it was very, very moving. And to see him there with his kids, just lovely.
Did you sit near him at the screening?
I actually, William, there were so many people with cameras in his face that we have the backs of people's heads. So that's how close we were. And then I saw him at the after party, but he was surrounded. It was very hard to get near him. It's all about him.
What a thrill, though. I sure hope they all make a lot of money and he's able to make more Westerns.
I do not have scenes with him, but like I said, with 170 speaking parts and a huge sprawling saga, my scenes are mostly with Mr. Rooker, Michael Rooker, who is a character. Have you ever met him?
Oh yeah, we've competed against each other in mounted shooting.
He's lovely, lovely guy. It was very funny. When we were flying to Moab for the fitting, I saw him on the plane, but it was 7 a.m. and he was sitting in a different row. And I was like, all in good time. When we land, we can chit chat. And Lance Henriksen was behind him on the plane, he's not doing Horizon. He was flying to Chicago, I think, for something else. But it just so happened the 3 of us had a 2-hour layover in the Denver airport so that we sat together and bonded. And one of my favorite movies in the world is Dog Day Afternoon. So I got to fangirl all over Lance Henriksen. I just want to know everything about that film.
Oh, he's terrific. And he's in that Sam Raimi Western, Quick and the Dead. He plays a gunfighter who comes in, and of course he gets killed. But that's a really interesting Western, but not up to the level of Horizon or Open Range. Open Range, I think, is one of the finest Westerns in the 2000s.
I think it's really great that Horizon is a serialized big feature film because the westward expansion with in the middle of the Civil War and the families moving, the wagons coming, it's a very complicated thing. And to tell it in only 1 or 2 hours is, I think, impossible. It's very complicated with the colonizing and the running rampant over the people who are already here. I love the fact that he's taking his time establishing the relationships and laying the groundwork for a very complex story. So I'm super proud to be a part of it.
To tell this epic story in 2 or 3 hours, it wouldn't be possible to have the depth and the number of major roles, the characters in this film.
And he's got not only the people coming across in wagons, and he's got Mexican characters, the Mexican people who were there, and scouts, and the native peoples, but also the Chinese workers.
It's real. It's real. You feel like you're watching on a big screen a documentary, honestly.
Yeah.
And this is the way it must have been, but not a pretty picture.
No, really.
I mean, it's a beautifully shot film, but it's not a pretty picture of America and manifest destiny.
Right. And it's a very three-dimensional film where nobody is the clear villain. Everybody has their faults and they're human. They're all human beings. I'm super proud to be a part of it. And one of the first things that Michael Rooker said to me on the plane when we were landing, they didn't give you a name. You're just Mrs. Reardon. So what do you think? What do you think your name is? And without hesitation, I said, Mary Margaret Reardon. And we came up with a whole backstory that we had come over on the boat from Ireland, and how many children we had and who died. I think I had a daughter who didn't make the voyage, died maybe and he was an army person in Ireland, so hit the ground running, became a sergeant major in the Civil War. We and if everybody in 170 speaking parts is doing that, you've got a rich tapestry of endless possibilities. And like I said, super three-dimensional characters that you can do anything with.
Well, it's wonderful, and it's wonderful of you to join us and share these stories, Elizabeth. Just terrific. Thank you for coming.
Anytime.